How's first day of PAX? Cool.
I luckily can't see how many people are out there. It's just a fog.
I'm Tony Lawrence. I'm the studio director of Wētā Workshop game studio.
And I'm Steve Lambert. I'm the art director for Tales of the Shire and now creative director for Game Studio.
Yeah, so we've been working on Tales of the Shire now for a little over 3 years.
Yeah.
But you've had a long history with Wētā Workshop. So tell us about your background and what does the Lord of the Rings mean to you?
So, I mean, I've been at Wētā 20 years now, which is, it seems like a long time doing one thing, but it's been many different jobs and many different lives within one company, which is fantastic. But the Hobbit and Tales of the Shire and Middle-earth in general have been kind of part of my life forever. It's just been part of the stories and everything that have been told to me and that I've read since an early age. And it's funny how something that's such a big property that can affect so many different people can be so intensely personal to you, and you always take your own kind of individual kind of learnings and kind of feelings from it, like, you know, things like The Hobbit and, you know, Star Wars and properties like that, they've pushed me into the career that I'm in, and I'm incredibly lucky that I live in a city where, you know, those kind of things were made, and I got to follow my dreams in the place I live. So, yeah, it's when I take something like the Hobbit as a learning journey for me, there's a kind of really stark memory I have in my mind of, like, in Wellington in the 80s when it's, you know, wet and outside, it's like this grey kind of windy, nasty blob, and those kind of storybooks that I had, like from that and the audiobook that I had, I would just sit there and listen to that over and over again. And those kind of pictures that I had in my mind were, and kind of that world of fantasy and kind of exploration of the world is kind of the thing that made me want to explore those as a career. Yeah, when it comes to those storybooks, that also the visual treatments, the early illustration, there's sort of I don't know if anyone remembers them, they're probably too old, but there's the little golden books, and they had the little shiny golden spines, but there's a certain kind of illustrative style that was in a lot of them. Early, you know, there's a lot of kind of early illustration that was done in them it's very gestural, very simple, very watercolory. It's not considered fine art by any stretch, but it was really something that made an impact on me, and I kind of wanted to bring some of those feelings to and memories to the Tales of the Shire game. Yeah, like not just the artistic style, but also the memories that I have are the sort of there's that kind of coming of age thing which the Hobbit kind of sits in. There's this world that hasn't really kind of fallen yet. You know, they've gone off and they've adventured and they've come back and with treasure, but the fall hasn't happened. You know, the ring is still in place in the Shire, and the darkness and everything is off in the distance. And that's kind of my memory of that again is that it's a sort of a childlike, naive quality to our game, which is what we've brought to the world. You know, we haven't gone to those darker areas of Middle-earth. I mean, we've tried to reference them in the story, and we've brought as much of those kind of little tales and kind of snippets of things that might have been, you know, passed from character to character and brought them into the narrative. But ultimately, it's still it's a place of peace and kind of tranquility. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think having been there, like Wētā Workshop, the history just drips off the wall. Like, it just seeps into you everywhere you walk.
It's quite daunting in some ways. Like you have a place which has become kind of part of Middle-earth history and is such a core part of the studio itself. The literally stuff is dripping off the walls. It's like one of my favorite places in the world are dusty kind of old museums with you know, little handwritten notes on everything and old swords and shields, and you know, and I get to work in that. It's like this kind of crazy. And that's also leached into the kind of the stuff that I do. I've actually forged a sword from scratch, and I've helped build guns for films, and I've helped build these physical things, and I take those kind of learnings from that, and it kind of all bleeds into how I build a digital world. Because for me, I see a lot of design out there that is built in unreality, and I think it's lovely to kind of fantasize and go on those kind of imagination quests. But I also love how people can take those imaginations and bring them to a more practical, realized space.
And I think one of the other things is that everyone who works with Wētā Workshop is an expert on Lord of the Rings lore.
Yeah, it's there are a lot of people who are Tolkien scholars that are very quick to kind of put you right if you get anything wrong. In fact, we literally have a Tolkien scholar on our narrative team. He goes off and lectures at Oxford University and visits Tolkien's home. So not only is he really generous, this is Darren Ormandy, he's really generous with that knowledge, and it's like it's almost a trip back to being told the story, because I'm a huge fan of Middle-earth, but there's still so much I don't know, and you can kind of sit there and he will extrapolate for if you let him get going, he'll go for hours on how this caused this, and to me it's almost like relearning it or finding new gems that we can not only bring to our property, but it's just lovely learning something new about something you already love. So.
Oh, it's true, and it's everyone. It's from Richard Taylor right through to our accountants.
Yeah. I mean, like it's this a certain satisfaction of having, people who have created absolutely iconic pieces of what we think of from the films, come to you and compliment you, or really just be moved by what you're doing, and it's it is very daunting with that kind of level of talent around you all the time.
Yeah.
But everyone there is just so generous with their knowledge and their experience that you always sort of feel part of that learning. Yeah.
Cool. And as the art director for Tale of the Shire, how was that effect of having the lore around you and knowing the lore yourself and being so, I guess, immersed in that lore for most of your life? How does that bring yourself into the game?
Well, we always have to kind of take into account what is written and what is kind of what you think of as that kind of core fact. I forget the term now. And then what is not written, and what we kind of need to take and interpret from the book and turn it into our kind of creative interpretation of it, and not take too much liberty with anything. There's always kind of, when you take a creative interpretation of something that's very well known, there's always going to be things that you decide are more important than others, and there's certainly aspects that you want to draw out and focus on. And what is our unique kind of take on that world, rather than the thing that people might expect? I mean, often in Lord of the Rings, people think epic fights and battles and everything, but the true kind of core of this the world comes back to this kind of community, and the Shire is kind of that tranquility that it's all about. That's what they're fighting for, right? This is what all this war and kind of and death is about, is protecting this little sanctuary, or at least the idea of sanctuary within Middle Earth, and we can just kind of focus on that part and kind of enjoy that.
Yeah, I've got to say it's delightful going to play. When the first time I played it, I was just blown away by what it looked like. It felt so real, and it felt like a different take on what you're looking at and playing. I just wanted to sit and just watch and walk around the world.
Well, we certainly had so many things that we could have done with it, that when we started the design for the game, it was, how come someone hasn't done this already? It seemed like such an obvious choice, and then you start kind of building it, and you start seeing comments like, why wasn't someone build a game about cozy living in the Middle Earth in the Shire? And you're like, well, we're getting there. It's just going to take us some time.
Cool. And who would you say your artistic references that you drew upon to draw the art style? Because it's quite unique. It's quite something we haven't seen before in a game, whether alone Tale of the Shire or a Lord of the Rings game.
There's a lot of different references based on which kind of thing I'm kind of thinking about in the game. obviously that kind of early storybook feel is the main thing I wanted to capture. But there's some kind of artistic, I guess, philosophies or methodologies from people like William Morris. There's or the arts and crafts movement, particularly, and things. There's this attitude of creating a world that is crafted, and everything around you is given care and attention, and it's a bespoke world where you're, pre-industrialization. Everything has been created by hand for a purpose. It's not just you walk down the store and buy a set of cutlery. So when we build a set of cutlery or any minuscule thing, I don't want people thinking of them as just cutlery. It's this thing that someone has crafted and put time and energy into. That's how I approach those kind of things from an artistic direction, but also trying to keep that idea in people's heads, especially the artists, because it's very tempting to just go, it's just a spade or it's just a bucket. It's like, well, if you've paid the blacksmith to make a bucket and they've gone and spent energy and time doing this, and that's their job in a tiny little Shire village, then they're going to put love and energy into those small things. And then you've got artists like Singer Sargent. There's a particular kind of approach that he would take to paintings where he would, from what I've read, he would stand there and he would kind of just look at the canvas, and then he would go in with his big brush and just kind of put one stroke down at a time, and it would, everything is measured and considered. And I've always wanted to kind of, in my approach to things, do that, because I don't want it to just be random. I mean, there's a certain kind of happy accident that you will get out of making things, but I like to really consider each aspect of it, which can be quite time-consuming and fiddly, but it's also important to me that it's a kind of got a simplicity and elegance to it.
And deliberate.
And deliberate, yeah. I mean, especially these days, there's a lot of games and kind of, well, just media in general that is really heavy on this high detail and high frequency and high levels of complexity. And I've always kind of found things that were simpler and more elegant, more appealing, and I'm trying to bring that to this. So, what else? The other artists, sort of the early comic book illustrators and even just early kind of newspaper illustrators like Norman Rockwell and Lambert, and that they've got a bit more kind of refinement to them than I guess the books that I was talking about before. But again, there's almost a kind of a throwaway nature to that kind of early illustration, and wasn't really considered as high art or anything. But it's a utilitarian and kind of there was a quaintness and a kind of rosy-cheeked kind of innocence to it all, and it's like I hate to say like this mega view of the kind of the world, but it's that kind of 50s kind of idyllic thing that never really existed, but it's kind of you kind of you imagine that something would be that beautiful and innocent, and that's, I guess, kind of calling back to what I felt and wanted to kind of communicate with the art style, and also how I want to kind of convey it to my kids. I mean, unfortunately, they trying to drag them out of Fortnite and look at this might be a bit of a challenge, but I like the idea that maybe I could tell some of those stories to them in a medium that they were more interested in than a book at the moment. But yeah.
That's working. Having been here for the last week, I've had people come up to me and I didn't know that you're going to be making this game, but my wife or my son or my daughter has said, this is what I want to look at. This is really interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, we feel like there's a huge kind of audience out there that often isn't spoken to with these kinds of games, especially Lord of the Rings as a property. It's tended to be kind of like a boys thing or whatever, and this is, it really isn't. It's such a wide world full of, these amazing stories and such depth. It's perfect for us to kind of explore those other parts of the world.
You've done it really well through the art style. But how would you describe the art style to people who haven't seen it before?
How would I describe it? I mean, the simple one is painterly.
Yeah.
But there's certainly trying to capture a painterly, kind of soft, kind of simplified sort of pastiche of the world. There's quite a challenge with that, in that you can often create a still image or a 2D graphic of something, and it will work in a certain way. But the minute you turn it into a three-dimensional world that you have to navigate around, it becomes quite the challenge. There's a few properties out there now that have kind of really solved this really well, but until recently it's sort of been quite hard to make it not look odd or just overworked.
Yeah, it really works. I guess Wētā isn't just a game studio, it's quite a large organisation. What's special about working with Wētā and making games with Wētā Workshop?
Well, I mean, I kind of alluded to it before. It's that kind of the wider world of Wētā is, you know, we do film props, we do sculpture, we do merchandising, there's tourism, there's location-based experiences. There's just so many different things, and we tend to kind of, or at least I've tended to kind of get my sticky fingers in all of them. You know, you get collared into the most random projects at times, and you know, one minute you'll be doing like a game, and the next minute you're like building like a 20-foot tall figure or something to go with them. But for me, that learning experience of going into the workshop and learning with my hands, I try and bring so much of that to what I do in the digital realm. And then being there for that much time, you really generate some fantastic relationships with those people. And you know, we love to go back to those people again and again that have kind of made such a stamp on, and especially in Middle-earth, and kind of bring them into our newer productions as well.
Yeah. So that's a big thing, right? We can actually go back and talk to the people who made those films.
Yeah.
How does that like impact itself in making games?
I think it's more that kind of like, you almost kind of they've proven themselves as really great guardians of the lore, and we have sort of felt like, well, we need to prove ourselves to be of that ilk as well. Not just for us, but like, you know, there's a lot of people who this world is so important to them, and you know, we want to do it right. We're right by them and right by Tolkien himself, that we are not, you know, taking liberties or being flippant with it. I mean, the game itself like is not just a cozy game with the Shire slapped on top or the Hobbit slapped on top. It really is trying to take what is important to the world of Hobbits, and we identified that as you know, food being love, in terms of food being something that you share and you break bread, and you're in a shared space with people telling stories, and that became the linchpin after sort of we veered around many different kind of design aspects of it, but that kind of became one of the core focuses for the game. So really bringing in what it feels like to be a hobbit and live in Middle-earth, and with those narratives that our narrative team developed, it was really bringing in all sorts of interesting little tidbits from different places, and how they can bring in you know, the dwarves, and how we can bring in other bits and pieces. It was interesting too, like again with our kind of our law keepers, trying to kind of, it would be lovely if we could bring in, you know, the Ents or something, and bring them in, but you know, you do these people, you know, there's no Ents in the Shire at this time. There's at least 55 years before the, you know, I mean, there's very, very kind of strict kind of rules about what and what we couldn't kind of get away with in that.
Yeah.
Overrun to the end of those points.
We're getting there. I mean, the other thing about working with Wētā Workshop is the number of skills you can call upon. I mean, I think when I first arrived and found out we had some of the world's best concept artists, or as we were talking a couple of weeks ago about, I'd like to get a character model, I'll just get a sculptor to sculpt something for me.
Yeah.
How does that really help?
Well, it's lovely to be able to kind of go to people who are experts in their craft, that have been physically model making things, and get them to maybe make a maquette or build something physically that then you can kind of reinterpret or bring into the world that you're developing. So it brings people who are, it's not just young people who are used to using computers. We've got a couple of people who have never used a computer in their life or hate using them, but that doesn't mean we should kind of leave that kind of talent and kind of expertise behind. We want to bring that through with us, and there are a lot of people like that. We've got people who are so specialised in everything from leatherwork to metalwork and how
robots and animatronics.
Animatronics and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, so it's really future forward thinking, but also trying to keep alive a lot of things that are, I guess you'd call them, the skills of the past.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, a really good example of that is even with Avatar, right? We've got what is potentially a film of the most kind of technological advancement, but using physical, handmade props that are individually stitched and woven for hours on end, which then are scanned in and reinterpreted digitally, and it's a lovely way to work that kind of is quite unique.
Yeah, it really is. Games are digital, but not at Wētā Workshop.
Yeah, but that's the basic thing, is that the games are digital, but our experiences and the real world life experiences that we bring to them are often not. I'd be the first to see the irony in building a game which is all about community and living simply yet in a computer game. There's games out there which are about simulating stuff. Like, well, why wouldn't you just go and do that for real? But there's something about doing it on the computer that, or just experiencing it at your pace and in your kind of, I guess, coziness situation that is different.
Yeah, it kind of like brings to mind the fellowship of building a game. It's the fellowship in the Lord of the Rings is the way that we work at Wētā Workshop.
I think the camaraderie that we've had building this game is it's been fantastic. Like the different kind of people that we've brought on as we've gone through this have all been fantastic to work with, and it's like I say, the camaraderie of building that game together and sharing those stories, like I was saying with Darren, sharing those stories and kind of learning new things about the world that you might not have known is quite a magical experience.
Absolutely. I guess having all that around you, has there been any challenges making this game? There's
quite a few challenges, but they're different depending on the nature of them. Especially when it comes to interpreting lore, we're trying to work out how we both serve the narrative for the game and what we want players to feel and experience, but also how we can make sure that it isn't touched on the wrong things. I mean, my art team are probably fed up with this story, but it's like the one thing that always annoyed me was when we were laying out Bywater and the village around it, we'd mapped everything out really accurately to what we've found from the information of the green dragon's going to be here and this is going to be here, and then you kind of spread out the distance and you realise, well, that's actually way too far for a player to run, but maybe we need to just kind of create a slightly kind of almost maquette version of it while keeping things in the right place.
Fast travel.
What's that?
There's no fast travel.
No. It's a cozy game. You're not running around too fast. So, but also, then you discover, well, I'm going to define that Bywater is on the south of the lake, but we're in the northern hemisphere, and the sun is actually more southerly facing. Therefore, your sun would be coming in to the back of the hillside, and you'd be in shadow most of the time during winter. And it's like you go, well, how much do I want to kind of push the lore and make? Someone's going to sit there and going to go, well, the sun's going the wrong direction if we switch this the other way. So it's always a kind of a trade-off between what is going to work better for the visual communication, the story, and the experience.
Yeah, right. New Zealanders, well, hobbits don't have New Zealand accents, for instance.
Hobbits don't have New Zealand accents. Yeah. We had quite a lot of fun auditioning people because we don't have voice actors, but having a bunch of people in the room grunting as hobbits is quite amusing.
Yeah. Oh, that's very cool. I guess what are your favourite things about the game? What are the things that you've really, really enjoyed contributing or putting through?
The thing that I've enjoyed the most is just getting a chance to revisit things that you kind of might have had given to you in the past from other interpretations of the game, and go, oh, hang on, well, that's not quite what I had in my memory or what I had in my head. What is our version of this? And I mean, that's both exciting but also challenging, because especially the films, they've got such a visual impact on the zeitgeist of the world that people kind of expect a certain thing when they think this subject or that subject. So you're trying to reinterpret that and kind of give your take on it while not having people go, what the hell is this? And I think other companies have done that in the past for other games, but it's different when you're kind of sitting in amongst that, like I say, that kind of background of knowledge and experience, and the people that have created some of those initial really iconic images.
Yeah, I'd say that's also, I guess, sort of the DNA of working with Wētā Workshop, is the ability to take something very well known and very well liked, and people love it, and then taking a different perspective on what that looks like.
Absolutely, I think that's we really look forward to kind of going, okay, what's the obvious solution to this? Put that aside and go, okay, right, that's the obvious solution. How wide and far can we take this? And then you go, okay, well, the obvious solution is still the better solution, but maybe we can bring these things on, or maybe, no, this was actually a much more interesting way to take this. And what can we, how far can we kind of push this idea? What unique kind of things can we bring to this so that it's not just, the same thing again? And
I have to say, something like Tales of the Shire, like you said before, it's such an obvious idea, a cozy game set in the Shire. Right? There's no questioning how that sits outside the law is firmly in it. Yeah,
I mean, those ideas that come along where you go, why hasn't someone already done this, are exciting, because you go, hang on, we might actually have something here that it's either a really good reason or it's a really bad reason. If people haven't done it,
it's really good.
It's a really good reason. But that unique thing, that something is going to be able to kind of stand out from what's out there already.
Yeah, okay, cool. I think we probably want to ask some questions before we get into this chat, but is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I mean, I brought a cheat sheet because I knew I was going to forget something, but I just wanted to read this quote from Tolkien, which is something that Darren gave me halfway through. I hadn't heard it before. I don't know, many people have, but it's like, this is a quote from Tolkien. I would draw some of the great tales in fullness and leave many only placed in the scheme and sketched. The cycles should be linked to a majestic whole, and yet let's leave scope for other minds and hands wielding paint, music, and drama. And I mean, there's been sort of some interpretation of how far he meant that to go, but what I do love about that is like, he seemed to want other people to kind of pick up this mythos and kind of and run with it and take it to fill in the gaps, and kind of there's what's written, and then there's what's like when you're given a description of a character, when you're given a description of Bilbo, for example, you don't automatically think that everyone else looks like Bilbo. There's all the other characters, but you fill in those blanks, and what filling in those blanks is kind of what the whole job of this has been, is trying to take the really known, obvious qualities and kind of fill in those blanks and take it to new places.
And I found that really surprising as well, like knowing a property such as Lord of the Rings. There is a lot of flexibility in how you interpret it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's so argued over. I mean, you go to any forum and there's there's a lot of passion arguing about this stuff. But I think that passion is because people care so much, but also because there is interpretations. There is, if it was absolutely clear cut and dried, I think there would be less arguing about it. But I don't think there's any shortage of arguing about Middle Earth.
Yeah, no, well, there's not, and it's been a pleasure. I guess if there's any people who would like to ask some questions of Steve, we'd love to hear them.
If not, I can't even see.
We've got someone coming.
Oh, there we go.
Did the release and negative critical reception of the Gollum game late last year have any impact on the development or the insight into this game?
I mean, we've just always been focused on producing, a good quality product. We want to we're not really taking into account how the reception of that goes, because we had a really clear vision of what we wanted to make and how well we wanted to make it, and we wanted it to stand on its own kind of merit. So that's what we were interested in.
You've had some fantastic success, which is brilliant. Being in the world that Tolkien has created in a space that means so much to so many people, did you feel a sort of a weight or a pressure, like in that quote sort of brilliantly, encapsulated that you've sort of got a creative license to sort of interpret things how you want, but have you felt like a pressure or a weight, you spoke about people arguing about the way things should be, around how your work is interpreted by people, and potentially upsetting people who do, like this world means so much to so many people?
I mean, absolutely, there's a huge weight on us. Like, it's really important to us to be respectful of the law. It's such a foundation to the company that we work for. It's such a core part of us that, I mean, for me personally, I don't want to be the person who stuffed it up for the company, but also like for the people out there, I want people to enjoy it and feel like we've been respectful of it and told the stories that they either imagined or wanted to hear, and how we've taken what Tolkien has done and tried to build on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even say that out of just the sheer effort that's been going on over 25 years. We are custodians of Lord of the Rings. We have to be true as much as possible. But that being said, we've also already had the criticisms of different things, so we're well prepared for it.
Yeah. Hi.
I guess, given that this is a cozy game, have there been any particular cozy games that have inspired working on this, or has it just been looking through the law towards getting the cozy vibes?
There's lots of different aspects from cozy games that we're trying to kind of bring here, and also by focusing on certain things like cooking and everything, we were kind of keen to give our approach on that. But there's always, when you're building any game or any product, there's always kind of little bits from pieces you're going to pull from different areas that are references, just like any the art references that we've used.
Yeah, but there's things like we don't farm as hobbits, we garden.
Yeah, so there was certainly a thing like if we're going to do farming in the game, if we're going to do planting of any kind in the game, it seemed really weird to be farming because it sort of has this sort of industrialized kind of feel to it. And what's our version of farming? Well, it's actually just, it's having a really beautiful little garden that you can attend, and instead of, min-maxing everything, you're really focusing on kind of creating the best of something like we didn't actually get to this, but I really loved the idea of having like a massive pumpkin growing competition where you have the largest pumpkin in town and roll them down the hills or something. It's sort of,
as a hobbit, that's not a terribly large pumpkin.
Yeah. Hey.
I think they were here first.
I think we're over to your side.
Yeah. Oh, my side? Okay. I'm just curious, from a world building and storytelling point of view, as someone who knows how sort of hectic and chaotic it can get living in one chaotic person's brain, dealing with a team and building a project like this, how do you, I guess, where do you draw the line to stop yourself from being like, okay, we're just going to cram absolutely everything into this? Like, how do you make those choices?
I think building any game is always a huge trade-off between how much stuff you can put in there versus what the scope is of actually being able to actually build it, because you can throw lots of things in there, but if they aren't built to a certain level of quality or they don't work together, it's just shoved in there for the sake of it. So, and there's also kind of trade-offs we have to make. Like if we want to make appeal to more audiences, we want to avoid certain things like smoking and drinking, which is it's a shame because there's a Hobbit things, but we want more people to be able to live in this world as well.
Yeah, and it's just really hard making those decisions to what doesn't go in and what doesn't.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like any session of ideation always has 100 ideas. The hard part's actually selecting which 3 of those you're really going to spend the time and effort on. and what are going to really enhance the game.
And they to become your first choices when you're looking for post-release content. Like, oh, that idea we had, let's do it now.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. It's really cool hearing how adamant you are staying to the lore, but in the kind of area in between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, where I think this game is set, will you be adding anything new to the kind of canon of Middle-earth? Like your own additions to the already existing world?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the canon is what Tolkien wrote, right? We don't really add to the canon in that sense. There's certain like kind of, you know, our version of it is going to add kind of, you know, we kind of think of it as the folk tales and other bits and pieces, but we're not really, I don't think we're really imbuing what we've done into the world that, you know, like another property is going to have to pick up and run with as such, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Hey.
Firstly, love your work.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, out of all the stories of Middle-earth, it's obviously such a giant IP, what was it about the Hobbits and Fireside that made you green like that project over another, say, more action fantasy style game?
I mean, the choice of that project over another, I think partly came down to why hasn't someone done this already. But I think we started this like just as we were in lockdown for COVID. So you're sitting there, you're kind of stuck, and there's this what feels like, you know, the world kind of coming to an end, and it's like the idea of cozy games was really starting to explode globally, and it's that escape to somewhere that's kind of slightly simpler and slightly less chaotic, and you know, a bit of a break from what's going on out there. It just seemed like a really good fit for that, and I think a lot of people wanted to explore the Shire again and rediscover some of those aspects. Thanks.
Hey.
What's that?
Other Middle-earth games have given players a chance to see several locations, but mostly via cutscenes or isolated quests or battles. Given the approach that your studio has taken, has the game been developed to either currently contain or allow for expansion, so players might be able to explore places like Bree or Rivendell, etc., in a more leisurely pace?
I mean, the more people that buy the game, the more chances we have to explore elsewhere. You know, I mean, it is really will come down to how people enjoy it and whether or not they want to see more places. I mean, we certainly discussed, you know, whether or not we would go to the hill, or whether we would go off into various other places in the forest, or all sorts of kind of sort of places that push the boundaries of the Bywater area. But we really wanted to kind of, this is not an exploration game. It's very much about being at home and being safe and cozy and happy at the place you live, rather than venturing off, which started to feel like a much different experience. You know, there are times you're kind of running around Bywater going, I really kind of wish I would kind of go off there, but hobbits are, you know, notoriously insular and want to just stay where they're at. So that kind of felt right to kind of keep us kind of in that little area.
Yeah, I mean, the vastness of the Lord of the Rings universe is huge just within those books. I mean, it's not just the Shire. We're in Bywater. It's something smaller, and you know, and we can move to there, like you said. Let's see how many people buy it and see how big we can make it.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. I was wondering if you could explain a little about how you worked your way to your position, like how you reached the job that you have at the moment.
Sorry, I didn't actually hear the first part of that.
Oh, sorry.
How did you get to the job you've got?
How did I get the job?
How did you work that way?
Just sheer luck. I mean, like I said, I can't imagine not drawing and creating. It would just be weird for me. It's like breathing. Like I said, reading the books and kind of watching the making of films. I mean, I got into this particular job right now through film and TV rather than through creating games. I was always a gamer, and I used to spend a lot of time modding games. I think I probably spent more time just kind of, you know, stuffing around with modding games than I ever actually played them half the time. So I think kind of felt natural kind of progression from there. But just making games is just a creative outlet for me personally. It's just another of many. I love making pretty much anything, and I love doing things with my hands more these days because I just spend so much time in front of a computer screen. But that's certainly where I've got there from.
Yeah, I've got to say, working with you, Steve, you're hard to stop. You just want to keep creating wherever you are.
Yeah. Oh, a little bit of a personal story. I actually had a stroke in the middle of the year, which is not the best thing in the world. But for a while, I couldn't draw and I couldn't see things and I couldn't, I had no energy to make stuff. And it was like, to me, that was like the world was really ending. But luckily, I seem to have recovered somewhat. So,
Yes.
But yeah, it was like I think just spending every minute kind of observing and kind of making art was I just proved to people that that's what I was going to do, and that they really needed to hire me.
Hey.
So one of the benefits that you have of working with such extensive lore already created by Tolkien and other creators within this space, have you included any Easter eggs within this game that you're particularly proud of?
Particularly proud of? I mean, not me personally. I know of many that people have kind of put in here and there, but we were also very careful. We didn't want to kind of sneak too many things in there that was going to get us in trouble or anything. But there's lots of lovely little moments here and there and references to things. There's especially the narrative. Like the story has been just done so beautifully across many different tales. I mean, I think that would be the other real standout point of this game is not just a cozy game that you do cozy activities. The tales and the background stories really are such a huge focus, and they bring the whole of the characters to life, and they give you kind of reason and purpose to be in that world. We bring in lots of little moments from the wider Middle Earth in the story. There's a few things I can think of, but I'd rather you kind of discover them rather than me tell you where they are. Yeah.
Hi guys, thank you so much for coming out and sharing this with us. It's really cool to be able to hear from you, and I know this is a really highly anticipated property, so super, super thrilled that you're here. My question, funnily enough, probably plays straight into hers. I was wondering if there was, off the top of your head, like an obscure or very small creative detail, just one of those just random little things that nobody would really notice, but you would like us to look out for.
Oh, jeepers. There's actually probably quite a few.
Yeah.
I mean, you can probably find yourself, especially as an artist, if you're given time, you will sit there and you will probably spend far too long doing something that you shouldn't have been spending so long doing, and you can kind of really get attached. I mean, it's kind of a big no-no, I guess, in commercial artists to get attached to something, because the minute you get attached to it, inevitably someone squishes it or changes it. There's nothing more demoralizing than getting really attached to a beautiful piece of concept artwork, spending hours on it, and then the director kind of does this. And you're like, oh! But as far as the little details, I mean, I would just the buildings. The kind of thing I really enjoyed working on was because you'd sit there and you'd finish the little details of every last little kind of hinge and kind of it was lovely putting that kind of level of care and attention into those kind of finer details. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Oh.
Hi.
Hi.
I just have a question. With the years that you've been with Wētā, do you have like a favourite project that you've worked on? It might not be this.
Tales of the Shire, of course.
Yeah. But is there one that like you think back to in the years that you've done that like, oh, that was a good project?
Until I started on Tales, I mean, there's so many different kind of creative projects I've worked on where I've enjoyed for different reasons, especially if I'm doing different things on them. Like, I love sculpting, so working on a project that involves some sculpting and it is for me kind of quite satisfying. And there's lots of there's a few projects I've worked on where I've absolutely loved, but then they've gotten, cancelled or something, and you go, which is really hard because you want to be able to share that kind of enjoyment that you had in making something with other people. But that's unfortunately some things will never come out. It's strangely enough, the one that probably stands out to me most is actually I got asked to do an award for our crew, just as an anniversary, like you've done 10, 15, 20 years kind of thing. And to me, that stood out because it was like, it's not just a piece of art, it was something to kind of thank people for being part of our kind of, studio family for such a long time, that they'd put such an amount of effort and love into a lot of what they do, and to, I guess, respect that, and to have something that they could put on their wall and feel kind of affection for, and not just something you kind of shove in the corner on that. But that kind of meant something to me in that respect. Yeah.
Hey guys.
Oh, yeah.
Just sort of wondering, from a artistic point of view, with Lord of the Rings and sort of everything pre-existing, how do the decisions and conversations go of making it your own without being unrecognisable from what everyone sort of already thinks?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't quite hear the question.
I rephrase this. I think with the Lord of the Rings lore being set, making your own creative decisions around how to make that a game, how does that come about?
I mean, yeah. It's always going to come down to, I think, us talking about it as a group. There are people who know more about different aspects of the lore, and they will, amongst discussing it, we will decide what is, suitable and what's not. And we also, have a really close relationship with Middle-earth Enterprises, so they kind of are the ultimate guardians of Middle-earth. So if we always pass things through them for their opinion as well.
And I have to say, with any project that Wētā Workshop does, everyone becomes an expert as soon as it's on the table. Like you put a project in front of us, it's like, we'll read every book, we'll understand, we'll see every film, we'll really get to understand the depth of what it's trying to be before we start.
Yeah. I think, or just to add to that too, I think everybody who's worked on it has, I think the worst thing you could say to any of them is that they hadn't considered it enough. I think because everybody has put so much care and attention into the details, and we've had to make creative decisions around one thing or another for many different reasons, whether it's an artistic decision or whether it's a game design decision or whatever it is, and there are always going to be trade-offs, but everybody has kind of, brought their all to kind of making sure that it kind of meets that standard, right?
I've got a question for both of you, if that's okay. Do you have any advice for any aspiring makers on how to get into the industry, similar to a workshop like Wētā Workshop?
I just have to say, just be passionate about what you do. It'll show in what you make. One of the things that I've always found whenever I've looked at CVs and showreels and portfolios is, especially if they've been part of a big group class project or something, you'll see the same thing kind of coming through over and over, and different people will do better jobs at it than others, or there'll be something that stands out. But and Richard Taylor does the same thing. He will skip straight to the back of the CV and go, what has this person done in their own time? What have they spent their kind of past time doing rather than their student time, for example? Or and obviously if you're already working, that it's one thing to kind of show your portfolio of work that you've done as your job, but what keeps you driven beyond that? What stands out to you? What's your passion beyond the work you're paid for and asked to do? And that passion will come through to anything that you show, really.
I feel like a fraud when I answer that question.
What's that?
I feel like a fraud when I answer that question, in that my first job in games was head of a studio that just made Bioshock. So it was like, start from the top and see how we go from there. But But working with Wētā Workshop is very similar to that. It is, the expectation is it's always that. That's every day.
Yeah.
You have to show that you only want to be the best at what you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's, like I say, coming to my first job in games, yeah, I did put the work in. I worked pretty hard for the previous 20 years or so, doing things that I was passionate about. And that really helped put that in a games context. And really the things that really stand out working in games quite specifically is working with people. It's great that you have a passion that you want to really be able to show, and you should, right? That's what you're really good at. Be able to convince other people that passion's the right one, or then the idea is the best one, and have a collaboration to bring that on a screen as a collective. That's the skill. That's where the magic happens.
Yeah, there are plenty of very talented people out there, but to have people skills, and if you can't work with a team and you can't communicate your ideas properly, then there's only so far that will get you. Yeah, I mean the talent thing, like you look at what's online now, and I mean it can be very daunting, right? You take a scroll through ArtStation, and it's just, I still sit there kind of going, I should just hand my tools in at the end of the day, because it can be very, it can squish your aspiration if you don't, or it can build it depending on how you look at it. But what is it that you can bring? What is a unique kind of thing that you can bring to make your work stand out from the crowd? It doesn't have to be much, but I think for me it's the passion that kind of usually makes that pop.
Hi, not so much a question, but I do just want to say thank you so much for having the courage to put a dwarf on your female dwarf. It's not something that I've seen a lot, and I'm really excited about that as a concept. I just want to say thank you so much for actually putting a beard on her, on your dwarfsmith.
There was never any question. It was like that it was going to happen. It was in fact, I think it was the only first concept that I did for a dwarf was Neffy, and it was just, well, that's just going to be our dwarf.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think, no. Yeah.
Is this, cool?
Yeah.
Can you share any tips for achieving like a painterly style when working with procedural systems like the water?
Yeah, that was when we were talking about challenges before, like taking painterly styles and making them not feel weird and swimmy and kind of distracting is quite a challenge. Simon, our lead tech artist, he spent a lot of time trying to, with James, making very considered kind of trade-offs between what was a pure kind of painterly kind of impression versus what was going to work in a dynamic situation, especially with dynamic lighting. I mean, you've got, I found that quite hard coming from a film background again, where you've got a lot of control over every frame, and you can make all sorts of creative cheats in terms of where your lights are coming from and where your camera is and everything. But the minute you break those boundaries and have to have the lighting change dynamically and the camera be under control by the player, I mean, that was quite a challenge for me, having someone, I can move the camera anywhere I want and you can't stop me. And I'm going, that doesn't really look good from that perspective. So how do we solve for that, really? And that's a big learning thing for me on gaming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. One more question.
One more, yeah.
Sorry, I'm just going to move this down a bit. I'm not very tall. I was going to ask, thank you so much for your fireside chat. I was curious to know, how do you find new inspiration to keep inventing and creating for a franchise that has such a legacy?
I don't know if I know that. It's like I said, it just seems to, like, you just want to see what other pathways you can take it. I think the big thing would be focusing on the Shire, I suppose, as opposed to the wider world, and because it is the Shire and it is the that softer, kind of gentler kind of aspect that we're focusing on is what we can do with the visual treatment to really reinforce that, rather than feeling too gritty. I mean, there's sort of a trend to take, things that were kind of probably, more, for lack of a better word, cartoony, and give them that real grit and kind of real worldness. And I think with Tales, we were trying to do complete the opposite and just pull that grit back out again for this experience. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think Wētā Workshop does that better than most companies I've worked for.
I think that's about us.
Yeah, thanks everybody. It's been great having a chat with you and have great talking with Steve. And your questions have been fantastic. So yeah, thanks for your time.
Thanks very much.